The story continues after Darkschneider defeated the king of the Undead. Everyone had thought Master Gara died sacrificing himself to save them, but it turned out he was still very much alive. He gets back on his feet and begins berating Darkschneider for quickly concluding he was dead without confirming, and the two go on arguing pointlessly. Meanwhile, Arshasne, who just got back from the black hole the Undead King created, thinks back to the statements he made before he got blasted into oblivion by Darkschneider. He talked about using the Satan Ring to unlock a power even more powerful than that of the God of Destruction, and this leaves her very perplexed and worried. Images begin flashing in her mind, and she wonders if he was the same thing from 15 years ago. What dark and ominous thing could she be talking about? I guess we're about to find out in today's recap. Arshas is drawn out of her thoughts when the Satan Ring magically reappears before them, which means that the king of the undead is no more. Once again, they're all confused, but there's someone inside the castle that seems to be an expert on such matters. In the storage room under the castle, we see Abigail and Yoko having a worded exchange. The Satan Ring suddenly appears in the room where the other two demonic treasures are and begins to glow. He infers that the undead king he gave the ring to is most likely dead, and Yoko advises him to give up since his whole plan is going to fail. However, he doesn't seem too bothered because now he can have the ring all to himself and also take the devil mace and the blackmail armor to complete the trio of demonic treasures. Just then, the three weapons begin to glow, and Abigail does his signature villain laugh as he explains to her that the treasures are resonating with each other. Abigail then decides to go up into the castle to acquire the last seal from Princess Sheila and the king, but Yoko calls for the guards to stop him. They arrive and he warns them to get out of the way, but they don't back down. They charge at him and he effortlessly kills all of them with the weird spider-like tentacle breastplate on his body. The last guard tells you to lock the door so Abigail can't escape, but not surprisingly, the doors do very little to restrain him as he breaks through with ease. The dust clears and we see the Empress of Thunder, Arshasne, standing in the room with a menacing stance. Abigail sees her and assumes that she's come to have her revenge for what he did to her when she cast the accused spell on her. On the contrary, Arshas claims that she hasn't come to face him because of that. Abigail is surprised and starts recalling the events to get on her nerve. He reminds her how she was the one who wanted the curse so she could prove herself to him. Unfortunately, she couldn't defeat Darkschneider and even went on to betray them, so Abigail reminds her, but she claims it's all in the past. Abigail notices that Arshas is no longer as ferocious as she used to be, so he asks her what changed. That's when she reveals that it was the love Darkschneider showed her when he sacrificed his life for her that changed her. She tells him how all she does now is because of the love she has for Darkschneider. As you'd expect, Abigail quickly gets bored of the conversation, and seeing that she isn't seeking revenge, he tells her to step aside, but she doesn't budge, insisting that she has other questions for him. Suddenly, she activates her powers and an aura of lighting encapsulates her body. Lars, who's watching them, thinks about how Arshas no longer has her sword and suggests that the fight would be solely based on her magical power. Abigail doesn't seem bothered by her power-up, claiming that it won't be strong enough to defeat him because his tentacle breastplate would deflect all lightning attacks. Arshas give it a try anyway, and sure enough, Abigail doesn't get a single hit. However, his confidence is diminished when he sees the large thunderstorm forming above them. Arshas uses a large amount of her magic to create the dark clouds and then unleashes a tremendous amount of lightning on Abigail. Inside the castle, Priest Geo sees the massive storm and wonders who could be strong enough to perform such a spell. Meanwhile, the princess and her advisors also see the storm clouds before feeling the effects of the explosion beneath them. While they're still wondering what's going on, one of the guards informs them that the explosion came from the storage rooms under the castle, so they conclude that they're being invaded. Under the castle, the storage room is still standing by some miracle, and Yoko is left in a state of shock after seeing how devastating Arshas' power can be. However, it was devastating enough to defeat Abigail. Arshas is certain that the spell didn't kill him, so she calls out for him to show himself, so he does. He sneaks up behind her unscathed and grabs her by the neck, ready to strangle her. He gloats again, reminding her that she can't defeat him with lightning, so she decides to show him the other tricks she has up her sleeve. Suddenly, Arshas summons a windstorm around him, forcing him to release her. Abigail mocks the little tornado she's creating, claiming it's not enough to do him any harm. Meanwhile, up in the castle, the commander of the knights and all the other knights are watching over the king and Sheila. One of the guards sent to investigate returns and informs them that Arshasne is the one fighting the priest of darkness, Abigail. This should normally be good news, but because of Arshas' history of working with Abigail, the knights don't trust her, and as for the handsome hero, they trust him even less. Dark Schneider sneaks up behind the commander and tosses a ramen bowl on his head for his statement and arrogantly informs them that he's their only chance of survival. Back in the storage room, Arshasne continues to throw several wind attacks at Abigail, hoping they would stop him, but the Dark Priest appears to be taking very little damage. Up in the castle, Princess Sheila tells the other guards to restrain the commander before he causes a scene in his rage, and then invites Dark Schneider and Gera for an audience with the king. At the small meeting, the king thanks them for saving the kingdom several times, but Dark Schneider quickly cuts to the chase and asks Sheila to tell him about the last seal and where it is. As you'd expect, she hesitates because she doesn't fully trust him, but the egotistical hero makes it clear that not trusting him would be endangering the entire kingdom. As a result, she finally gives in and agrees to tell him about the seal. In the storage room, Arshas unleashes her most powerful wind attack on Abigail, which gets him buried by some rubble. Unfortunately, he gets back up unscathed, or so he thought. He tries to attack Arshas and his tentacle breastplate crumbles to pieces, meaning that her attacks were sufficient. He even coughs blood due to his injuries. Enraged, he accuses her of committing treason against the god of destruction, but she flips the table on him and reveals that Anthrasax isn't really a god. He's actually a demon, and Abigail has been deceiving the divine kings to help him resurrect a destructive demon he can't control. At this point, she's had enough of Abigail's tricks, so she summons an ancient beast and then transforms it into the lightning sword to finally finish Abigail off once and for all. Arshas blasts him away with her sword, but the resilient villain just won't stay down. He gets back up again, and it appears his power is getting replenished. She asks him why he's trying to resurrect the demon god of destruction when he knows he can't control it, but he doesn't answer her. It turns out that he's been deceiving the 4 divine kings, telling them that they would summon an ancient god to help them create a utopia, but in reality, it's a destructive god that would leave the world in ruins, and she still can't figure out what his motive is. In the castle, Princess Sheila is finally ready to tell Dark Schneider the secret of the last seal. She reveals that the seals were created to keep the demon god of destruction dead and locked away, and that a seal was given to each of the royal families. Dark Schneider assumes that the seal is in her necklace because she keeps fiddling with it while talking, but when he states his assumption, she laughs and reveals that her necklace is just an heirloom her mother gave her. The last seal isn't in any necklace, rather, it's hidden away somewhere no one would ever guess, and that place is inside her own body. Hearing this, Dark Schneider realizes how much danger she is in, because Abigail would be able to detect the seal wherever she is, so he promises to protect her at all costs. Under the castle, the 3 demonic treasures begin to resonate with each other again, and Abigail's breastplate gets regenerated. His power gets amplified, and the 3 demonic treasures start to merge. After the fusion, they combine into a gigantic mecha suit which Abigail fuses with. Seeing the gigantic weapon of destruction, Arshas is certain that she doesn't stand a chance against him, so as he blasts powerful beams at her, she escapes from the storage room with Yoko and Lars. Meanwhile, up in the castle, the knights are informed that Abigail has merged with a giant suit of armor, but the commander refuses to believe, claiming that it's impossible. However, his opinion quickly changes when Abigail breaks through the ground beneath them and flies out in his giant suit. The commander is left in a state of shock when he sees the terrifying machine, and even worse, the impact causes some parts of the castle wall to crack. The other elders are stunned that a human could merge with the 3 demonic treasures without being destroyed, but Priest Geo suggests that Abigail was able to do it because he's been given life by the dark magic and god of destruction. Meanwhile, Arshas confronts Abigail in his megasuit for the 2nd time, but she remembers that the black mail armor is resistant to almost all forms of magical attacks. Regardless, she believes that the lightning sword is strong enough to do some damage, so she gives it a try and unleashes a powerful attack, but it's not enough. She then tries to strike Abigail's exposed head with the sword, but he catches her and slams her against the wall. Thankfully, just when he's about to finish her off, Dark Schneider arrives with a terrifying giant golem of his own. The black golem punches Abigail's face, which happens to be the only weakness in the armor, so the Dark Priest decides to use Dark Schneider's weakness against him as well. He holds Arshas in his claws and threatens to kill her if Dark Schneider doesn't stand down. So Dark Schneider tricks him by pretending to surrender, and when Abigail lets his guard down, he attacks him with a powerful blow, forcing him to release Arshas so Darker Schneider can catch her. As he holds her in his arms, Yoko watches the two and can't help but get jealous when she sees how much he cares for Arshas, and not just like a father. Abigail accuses Dark Schneider of fighting dirty because he tricked him, but the latter explains that in battle, there's no such thing as fighting dirty. There's only fighting to win. The Dark Priest gets more enraged and unleashes a powerful blast on Dark Schneider and his golem. The young hero is too cocky to defend himself until the massive blast completely obliterates his golem. Everyone is stunned by Abigail's power, and that's when Darkschneider realizes that he's using the magic from the ancient world, which he got from Anthrasax. Abigail commends him for being clever enough to see the truth and also reveals his plan to destroy everything on the planet with his new power. He charges at Darkschneider and prepares to stump him into the ground. The handsome hero remains unfazed, and seeing this, Abigail asks him to surrender and join him. He promises to give him some of his dark power, but as you'd expect, Darkschneider declines the offer, so the Dark Priest crushes him with his giant armor. Everyone watching fears that Darkschneider is dead, but while Abigail is still celebrating his victory, the handsome hero cuts it short. He displays incredible strength to lift the gigantic mecha before throwing it against a wall. Abigail is shocked that he survived but refuses to give up. At this point, Darkschneider is very pissed off, so he promises to show Abigail just how powerful he is. Seeing this, Gara and Yoko already know that Darkschneider is about to go out of control again, and judging by the look on his face, they fear that he might even destroy the entire castle during the battle. Darkschneider suddenly casts a forbidden spell which creates a barrier around Abigail. After that, he summons starving demons from hell and traps them inside the barrier, believing that the only thing that can destroy the merged demonic treasures are demons. At this point, it feels like it's all over for Abigail because the starving demons immediately attack him. However, elsewhere, we see that Anthrasax is suddenly awoken. At the same time, Princess Sheila begins to feel unbearable pain in her body where the last seal is. Priest Geo fears that the seal might have broken inside her but can't explain why. Meanwhile, Abigail somehow manages to escape the barrier and destroy the demons. He then blasts Darkschneider with sharp blades of wind which cut off his leg and part of his shoulder. Darkschneider can't believe it, and neither can anyone else. Abigail then uses the dark magic he's drawing from Anthrasax to slam Darkschneider into the wall over and over till he collapses, seemingly dead. After that, the king and all the others fear that they're doomed, and Abigail begins climbing the castle wall to get the last seal from Sheila's body. They're surprised that he knows the seal is inside her, but they can't do anything to save her. Just when Abigail is about to get to the top, a surge of power blasts Darkschneider and he wakes up. He calls out to Darkschneider and unleashes his most powerful spell on him, not minding if it destroys everything around them. Unfortunately, even after such a powerful blast, Abigail remains standing in his Omega armor. The armor has a magic barrier just like the blackmail armor, which prevents any form of magic from doing any damage to it. Darkschneider fails to destroy Abigail and collapses in exhaustion, but while the villain is gloating as usual, Arshis appears and prepares to unleash a spell twice as powerful as the one Darkschneider used. The heat from the blast should normally be able to destroy Abigail's armor, but because he's using an anti-magic spell to protect the armor, her attempt to blow up the suit also fails. After Darkschneider and Arshis combine their magical attacks to destroy Abigail, the explosion that follows is so massive that it almost brings down the entire castle. The king and all the others assume that Abigail has finally been defeated and even begin celebrating, but the villain just won't quit. Their celebrations are interrupted by Abigail's dark and ominous laugh as he emerges from the dust and smoke without any damage. At this point, they don't know what else to do because it's like nothing can defeat him. His suit is practically immune to magical attacks, and at the same time, he's able to draw dark magic from Anthrasax. Abigail prepares to destroy Darkschneider finally in his vulnerable state, but the handsome hero just gets back to his feet and reminds Abigail that he's not going to quit. As a result, Abigail initiates his Omega Collider, which was the same devastating attack he used to obliterate the giant golem. At the same time, Darkschneider prepares to unleash yet another powerful magical attack. Gara and the others warn him not to use any magic anymore since Abigail doesn't get hurt by it, but he refuses to give up. Gara and Arshis try to defend him, but Yoko stops them, assuring them that he isn't going to die, but that he's going to find a way to defeat Abigail. Yoko then steps forward and promises to do anything Darkschneider wants her to do, even if it involves sleeping with her. It seems like the offer motivates him even more because a powerful aura surrounds him as he unleashes another powerful blast on Abigail's armor. At the same time, Abigail activates the Collider and blasts Darkschneider with it. Darkschneider's blast hits the internal parts of the armor when the Collider opens to shoot him. The insides of the suit aren't immune to magical blasts, so this attack finally destroys the armor and Darkschneider manages to defeat Abigail. Afterward, the dark clouds begin to disappear and everyone is certain that Darkschneider has won because the dark energy around them vanishes. Unfortunately, this victory comes at a cost because Dark Schneider's body gets split in half even after losing an arm and a leg. They all think he's dead, but I guess by now we shouldn't be surprised when the hero comes back to life. Dark Schneider wakes up and laments about how he won't be able to sleep with Yoko anymore since his body got severed from the waist down. Yoko scolds him for being a pervert and Gara just laughs at his situation. Their childish bickering and jokes are interrupted when Abigail suddenly emerges from beneath the rubble and grabs Yoko with his tentacles. After Abigail takes Yoko hostage, Dark Schneider threatens to kill him, but the Dark Priest just mocks him for being weak ever since he became human. Gara and Arshesne try to defend Dark Schneider when Abigail says he's going to kill him, but when they stand in his way, he reminds them that they've been injured in previous battles and also used up most of their powers. It's a fact that they can't deny, but they refuse to back down. Abigail urges Dark Schneider to get up and fight him with all he has left, but the handsome hero seems to have given up at this point. Abigail blasts him again in the shoulder and then in the chest, boring holes into his body. Everyone around is disappointed that the great hero is refusing to fight anymore, but then he reveals that he can't risk Yoko's life because he loves her too much. Once again, Abigail mocks him for the statement, telling him that love has made him too weak to fight, reminding him of his old ruthless self. Eventually, the Dark Priest gets bored of talking and decides to finish Dark Schneider so he can bring his goals to fruition. However, just when he's about to attack him, two of Arshesne's friends arrive to save her and Dark Schneider. Kai Harn and Seen Eri are two powerful sorcerers as well, and they joined in the battle to save Yoko. Their attacks leave Abigail injured and exhausted. Also, now that he doesn't have a hostage to hide behind, Arshas can attack him without being afraid that she hurt someone else. However, not surprisingly, Abigail has a final trick up his sleeve. He reveals the dark evil devil cells which possess a tremendous amount of dark magic that he uses to summon an army of ghost knights. Arshesne and everyone else around joins in the battle against the Ghost Knights. Eventually, after a tough and grueling battle, the good guys manage to defeat all the ghost soldiers. Unfortunately, Abigail has another terrible plan. He uses the magic left to take the souls of the defeated ghosts and merges them till they grow into a gigantic and more powerful Dark Knight made up of skulls and bones. This one seems to be even more powerful than the mecha suit they fought before, but they don't back down from the fight. Meanwhile, Dark Schneider falls into a coma after losing an insane amount of blood, and in this state, he sees the apparition of Lucian Renlin again. Lucian manages to encourage Dark Schneider and gives him reasons why he has to keep fighting. Dark Schneider eventually wakes up, ready to fight again, but because he's missing his left arm and lower body, it's not likely that he'll be very efficient in battle. Dark Schneider declares that he's going to kill Abigail for what seems to be like the 100th time, and the Dark Priest just mocks him for being arrogant, pointing out that he can't even stand up. The mockery doesn't age well because just then, Dark Schneider engulfs his body with flames and uses them to regenerate his severed arm and lower body. It just so happens that because Dark Schneider and the God of Destruction possess the same kind of dark magic, he's also able to draw magical power from Anthrasax as well. These new limbs he forms are practically made of fire, and Dark Schneider's powers have also been incredibly enhanced. Dark Schneider realizes that if Anthrasax is fully resurrected, he would become the most powerful person in the world. The former Dark Schneider wouldn't even think twice before capturing the princess to resurrect the demon god, but ever since he came in contact with Lucian Renlin, he's changed and become more loving and compassionate toward humans. With that in mind, Dark Schneider prepares to finally defeat Abigail so he can save everyone else like the handsome hero he is. He begins blasting the giant skeleton knight with massive beams of fire, but Abigail just regenerates every damaged part. Eventually, Dark Schneider manages to overpower Abigail so much so that his destructive attacks surpass the Dark Priest's regenerative powers. He finally destroys the giant skeleton knight, and afterward, he goes to settle the score with Abigail. Dark Schneider first destroys the breastplate and then unleashes several heady punches on Abigail's face. For the final blow, he summons a flaming sword and uses it to strike Abigail, which sends him flying till he crashes on a rock. After the attack, Dark Schneider collapses again due to his exhaustion and injuries. His flaming body parts disappear and he's returned to the injured cripple he was a few moments ago. As he falls to the ground, Yoko is the first one who rushes to catch him. Dark Schneider pretends to be very weak, but in reality, he's taking the opportunity to touch her. Usually, she'd smack him in the head, but this time, she just blushes and is glad that he's alive. Once again, the joy is cut short when Abigail rises again. This guy just won't die. The Dark Priest begins to activate another spell to end Dark Schneider, but Yoko sees that he's standing on the edge of a cliff, so before he can release the blast, she runs toward him and pushes him off the cliff. Unfortunately, she falls with him. Abigail gets impaled on a sharp rod on one of the roofs, and as he dies, the power from the god of destruction fusses with the Satan ring, which causes a massive explosion that destroys the castle. Thankfully, Abigail's death puts an end to all his plans to resurrect the god of destruction, which means that the world is saved for the meantime. The story ends sometime later in a distant kingdom, and we see Yoko holding a terribly injured Lucian Renlin in her arms, and this can only mean that the Dark Saga is far from over. That's all for today's recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see the next part. Thanks for watching and see you next time.